Hare Krishna. Welcome all of you for today's reading session. Let us begin with prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from the book Teachings of Lord Chaitanya by His Divine Grace Vishwaguru Abhay Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. First, we shall read the last part of chapter 16 entitled Conclusion of Teachings to Sanatana Goswami. We will continue to read from where we left in the last session. After some days had passed, Narada told his friend Parvata Muni, I have a disciple. Let us go visit him and see if he is doing well. When the two great sages, Narada and Parvata, went to the hunter's home, the hunter saw his spiritual master coming from a distance and began to approach him with great respect. On his way to greet the great sages, the hunter saw that there were ants on the ground before him, and they were hindering his passage. When he reached the sages, he wanted to bow down before them, but before he did so, he carefully cleared away the ants with his cloth. When Narada saw that the hunter was trying to save the lives of the ants in this way, he was reminded of a verse from the Skanda Purana. Is it not wonderful that a devotee of the Lord is not inclined to give any sort of pain to anyone, not even an ant? Although formerly the hunter had taken great pleasure in half killing animals, since he had become a great devotee of the Lord, he was not prepared to give pain even to an ant. The hunter received the two great sages at his home and offered them a sitting place, brought water, and washed their feet. Then the hunter and his wife took some of the water and drank it. And finally, they both sprinkled the water on their heads. After this, they felt ecstasy and began to dance while singing Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. They raised their hands and danced with their clothes flying. When the two great sages saw this ecstasy of love of Godhead manifest in the body of the hunter, Parvata Muni told Narada, You are a touchstone, for by your association, even a great hunter has turned into a great devotee. There is a verse in the Skanda Purana which states, My dear Devarshi Narada, you are glorious, and by your mercy, even the lowest creature, a hunter of animals, also became elevated to the path of devotion and attained transcendental attachment for Krishna. At length, Narada inquired of the hunter devotee, Are you getting your foodstuffs regularly? You send so many people, the hunter replied, and they bring so much food that we cannot eat it all. That's all right, Narada replied. Whatever you are getting is all right. Now just continue your devotional service in that way. After Narada had spoken this, both he and Parvata Muni disappeared from the hunter's home. Lord Chaitanya recited this story to show that even a hunter can be engaged in the devotional service of Krishna by the influence of pure devotees. Continuing to explain the Atma Rama verse, Lord Chaitanya pointed out that the word Atma also indicates all varieties of the personality of Godhead. Generally, the personality of Godhead Himself, Krishna, and his different expansions are all known as the personality of Godhead. Anyone who is engaged in the devotional service of any form or expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is also called Atma Rama. All such devotees engage either in the regulative principles of devotional service or in devotional service in transcendental love. These two groups of devotees are each divided into three categories: eternal associates, those perfected in devotional service, and those newly engaged in devotional service. Newly engaged devotees can be divided into two groups: those who have already attained attachment for the Lord, and those who have not attained such attachment. When considered according to the two divisions of devotional service, namely, due to attachment in transcendental love and under regulation, these classes of devotees become eight in number. By following the regulative principles of devotion, the perfect associates of the Lord are further divided into four classes: the servants, the friends, the parental superiors, and the fiancés. Just as some devotees are perfected by the execution of devotional service, so some are eternally perfect. Of those following the regulative principles of devotional service, there are the advanced and the beginners, totaling 16 categories. And in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, there are also 16 types of devotees. Thus, the Atma Ramas can be considered to exist in 32 divisions. If the words Muni, Nirgrantha, Cha, and Api are applied to the 32 classes, then there are 58 different types of devotees. All these devotees can be described by one word: Atma Rama. There may be many different kinds of trees standing in the forest, but the word tree describes them all. Thus, the Lord gave 60 different meanings to the Atma Rama verse. In addition, he said that Atma means any embodied living entity, from the first living creature Brahma down to the ant. He cited a verse from the sixth chapter of the Vishnu Purana in which it is stated that all the energies of the Lord are spiritual. Although this is the case, the energy which is known as the source of the living entity is called spiritual, but the other energy, which is full of ignorance and is manifested in material activities, is called material nature. Even in the material creation, the living entities are innumerable. If by chance a living entity in the material world can associate with a pure devotee, he can engage in the pure devotional service of Krishna. Formerly, I thought of 60 different meanings for the Atma Rama verse, the Lord told Sanatana Goswami. But here another meaning has come to my mind by your association. After hearing the different explanations of the Atma Rama verse, Sanatana Goswami was struck with wonder and he fell down in devotion at the feet of Lord Chaitanya. I understand that you are personally the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, Sanatana said, and by your breathing have come many manifestations of Vedic literature. You are the teacher of Srimad Bhagavatam, and you best know the meanings of the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is not possible for others to understand the confidential meanings of Srimad Bhagavatam without your mercy. Do not try to eulogize me in that way, the Lord told Sanatana. Just try to understand the real nature of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the sound representation of the Supreme Lord Krishna. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam is not different from Krishna. As Krishna is unlimited, so each word and each syllable of Srimad Bhagavatam has unlimited meanings. One can understand these meanings through the association of devotees. Don't then say that Bhagavatam is simply a collection of answers to questions. There were 6 questions put by the sages of Naimisharanya to Suta Goswami, and Suta Goswami answered the 6 questions in Srimad Bhagavatam. There is a verse in the Vedic literature in which Lord Shiva says, "As far as the Bhagavatam is concerned, I may not know it," or Shukadev, Shukadeva or Vyasadeva may know it. As far as the Bhagavatam is concerned, I may know it, or Shukadeva or Vyasadeva may know it, or we may not know it. But actually, Bhagavatam is to be understood by devotional service and from a devotee, and not by one's own intelligence or by academic commentaries. At the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, verse 23, the sages of Naimisharanya asked Suta Goswami, Bruhi Yogeshware Krishne Brahmanye Dharmavarmani Swam Kashthamadhunopete Dharmakam Sharanam Gataha. My dear sir, now that the Lord has departed for his own abode, kindly tell us whether the principles of religion have gone with him. How can we find such principles after his departure? The reply was given in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, third chapter, verse 43. Krishne swadhamo pagate dharma jnanadibhis saha kalo nashtadrishamesha purana dhunoditaha. After Krishna departed to his abode with all religious principles, his representation, Srimad Bhagavatam, the Mahapurana, remains as the blazing, illuminating sun. Lord Chaitanya then told Sanatana Goswami, I was just like a madman in describing this Atma Rama verse in so many ways. Do not mind if I have said something mad. But if someone becomes a madman like me, he can understand the real meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam as I have explained it. Then Sanatana Goswami, with folded hands, fell at the feet of Lord Chaitanya and prayed as follows. My dear Lord, you have asked me to prepare a book on the regulative principles of devotional service, but I belong to the lowest caste. I have no knowledge. I do not know how such an important task can be finished by me. If you will kindly give me some hints about the preparation of such a book on devotional service, it may be that I shall be qualified to write it. The Lord then blessed him, saying, by the grace of Krishna, whatever you write will come out of your heart and be accepted. As you have requested, I will now give you some notes that you can take down. The first and foremost point is that one should accept a bona fide spiritual master. That is the beginning of spiritual life. Lord Chaitanya then requested Sanatana Goswami to write down the symptoms of a true guru and the symptoms of a true disciple. The symptoms of a guru are described in the Padma Purana. A person who is a qualified Brahmana and at the same time has all the symptoms of a devotee can become a spiritual master for all classes of men. Such a devotee and spiritual master must be respected as God Himself. Even though a person may be born in a very respectable Brahmana family, he cannot become a bona fide spiritual master if he is not a devotee of the Lord. One should not mistakenly think that a bona fide spiritual master has to be born in a so called Brahmana family. The idea is that a spiritual master must be a qualified Brahmana, that is, he must be qualified by his activities. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam when Narada speaks of the different symptoms characterizing the four divisions of social life. Narada therein states that Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras should be selected by their individual qualifications. In his commentary, Sridhar Swami has noted that birth in a family of Brahmanas does not necessarily mean that one is a Brahmana. One must be qualified with a Brahmana's symptoms, which are described in the Shastras. In the disciplic succession of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, there are two great acharyas, Thakur Narottama and Shyamananda Goswami, who were not born in Brahmana families but were accepted as spiritual masters by many famous Brahmanas, including Ganga Narayana and Ramakrishna. In this way, there are symptoms which both the prospective spiritual master and the prospective disciple must have, and both the disciple and the spiritual master must see whether the other is eligible to become either a bona fide spiritual master or a bona fide student. One should then know that the only worshipable object is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one should learn the various mantras and sacred songs. The Lord then instructed Sanatana to describe the symptoms of those persons who are eligible to accept the mantras and to describe how the mantras should be understood and perfected by ritualistic performances. Then the Lord instructed Sanatana to describe initiation, morning duties and duties of cleanliness, washing the face, brushing the teeth, and so on, the process of work and the prayers to be recited both in the morning and in the evening. The Lord also told him to describe how one should worship the spiritual master, how to mark one's body with gopi chandana, how to collect tulasi leaves, how to wash the room and temple of the Lord, and how to awaken Krishna from sleep. Then then Lord Chaitanya instructed Sanatana to describe different methods for worshipping the Lord with fivefold, 16-fold, or 50-fold paraphernalia, how to worship the Lord by offering him arati 5 times a day, and how to offer food to Krishna and lay him down on his bed. Next, Lord Chaitanya instructed Sanatana to write about the characteristics of both the form of the Lord in the temple and the Shalagrama Shila, and also to write about the effect of going to holy places where there are different temples of the Lord and seeing the form of God in the temple. Sanatana was also instructed to glorify the transcendental nature of the Lord and to describe the different offenses one can commit while chanting the Lord's name or describing or worshipping the deity. In the worship of the Lord, certain paraphernalia are used, such as a conch shell, water, incense, and fragrant flowers. The Lord instructed Sanatana to describe these, along with the chanting of prayers and hymns, circumambulation, and the offering of obeisances. Other topics for Sanatana to explain included following the regulative principles of Purascharana, accepting Krishna prasadam, rejecting foodstuff not offered to Krishna, and not indulging in defaming a devotee who has the actual symptoms of a devotee. Lord Chaitanya also instructed Sanatana to describe the symptoms of a holy man, the process of satisfying the sages, and the value of rejecting the society of undesirable persons, and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam constantly. Also to be described were how to follow the daily, fortnightly, and monthly duties, how to observe fasting on the Ekadashi day, how to observe ceremonies like the birthday of the Lord, and how to observe fasting not only on Ekadashi, but also on Janmashtami, Vamana Dwadashi, Ramanavami, and Narasimha Chaturdashi. Lord Chaitanya also instructed Sanatana to explain that it is helpful in the advancement of devotional service to avoid fast days that overlap with other days, Vidha. Also, to be explained were how to establish temples of the Lord, along with the general behavior, symptoms, duties, and occupation of a Vaishnava. And at every step, Lord Chaitanya said, Sanatana Goswami should give documentary evidence from the Puranas. Thus, the Lord gave a summary of all the topics Sanatana should include in his book on Vaishnava regulative principles. Sanatana Goswami was a great devotee of the Lord, and he was directly instructed to spread the cult of bhakti by writing many books. There is a description of Sanatana in the Chaitanya Chandrodaya, where it is said that Sanatana Goswami was one of the most important personalities in the government of Nawab Hussain Shah. Sanatana's brother Rupa Goswami was also a minister in the government, but both of them gave up their lucrative government posts to become mendicants and serve the Supreme Lord. Externally, the brothers became just like ordinary mendicants, but their hearts were filled with transcendental loving service and a great love for the cowherd boy of Vrindavan. Indeed, Sanatana Goswami was dear to all pure devotees of his time. Thus end thus ends chapter 16 of Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, entitled Conclusion of Teachings to Sanatana Goswami. Now we shall begin the next chapter, chapter 17, entitled Lord Chaitanya, the Original Personality of Godhead. Following in the footsteps of Kaviraj Krishnadas Goswami, we offer our respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya is described as follows. He is the only shelter for the forlorn, the most fallen, and he is the only hope for those who are completely devoid of spiritual knowledge. Let us try to discuss his great contribution of devotional service. The supremely powerful Lord Krishna becomes manifest in five different features, although he is one without a second. In order to serve five specific spiritual purposes, he becomes manifest in five ways. Such diversity is eternal and blissful, in contrast to the conception of monotonous oneness. From the Vedic literature, we can understand that the Absolute Truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, eternally exists with his diverse energies. Lord Chaitanya appeared with full diverse energies, and they are five in number. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya is said to be Krishna with diverse energies. There is no difference between the energy and the energetic in regard to Lord's appearance as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his four associates Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Prabhu, Gadadhara Pandita, and Srivas Thakur. Among these five diverse manifestations of the Supreme Lord, as the Lord Himself and His expansion, incarnation, devotional energy, and devotee, there is no spiritual difference. They are five in one absolute truth. For the sake of relishing transcendental flavors in the absolute truth, there are five diverse manifestations. These are called the form of a devotee, the identity of a devotee, the incarnation of a devotee, the devotional energy, and the pure devotee. Out of the five diversities in the Absolute Truth, the form of Lord Chaitanya is that of the original personality of Godhead, Krishna. Lord Nityananda is the manifestation of the first expansion of the Supreme Lord. Similarly, Advaita Prabhu is an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. These three, Chaitanya, Nityananda, and Advaita, belong to the category of Vishnu Tattva, or the Supreme Absolute Truth. Srivasa represents the pure devotee, and Gadadhara represents the internal energy of the Lord for the advancement of pure devotion. Therefore, Gadadhara and Srivasa, although on the Vishnu platform, are dependent, diverse energies of the Supreme Lord. In other words, they are not different from the energetic, but they are manifested diversely for the sake of relishing transcendental relationships. The whole process of devotional service involves a transcendental reciprocation of the flavors of relationship between the worshipper and the worshipped. Without such a diverse exchange of transcendental flavors, devotional service has no meaning. In the Vedic literature, Katha Upanishad, it is stated that the Supreme Lord is the supreme living entity among all living entities. There are innumerable living entities, but there is one living entity who is the supreme absolute Godhead. The difference between the singular living entity and the plural living entities is that the singular living entity is the Lord of all. Lord Chaitanya is that supreme living entity, and he descended to reclaim the innumerable fallen living entities. In other words, the specific purpose of Lord Chaitanya's advent was to establish in the present age the Vedic fact that there is one supreme personality of Godhead predominating and maintaining all the other innumerable living entities. Because the impersonalist or Mayavadi philosophers cannot understand this, Lord Chaitanya adventured himself to enlighten the people in general about the real nature of the relationship between the Supreme and the many dependent living entities. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's last instruction is that everyone should give up all other engagements and render devotional service unto him. But after Krishna's disappearance, less intelligent people misunderstood him. They became contaminated with the Mayavada philosophy, which produced so many mental speculators that people forgot the actual position of the absolute truth and the living entity. Therefore, Lord Sri Krishna himself as Lord Chaitanya again appeared in order to teach the fallen souls of this material world the way to approach Lord Krishna. The Bhagavad Gita teaches that one should give up everything and be done with this world of material attachment. A pure devotee of Lord Krishna and one who follows the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya are one and the same. Chaitanya's philosophy is that one should give up everything and worship God, Krishna. Krishna, as the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, spoke the same words indicating himself as the Supreme Lord. But the Mayavadi philosophers misunderstood him. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya, to clarify the situation, reiterated Lord Krishna's message. One should not declare himself to be as good as Krishna, but should worship Krishna as the Supreme Lord. We make a great mistake if we think Lord Chaitanya is a conditioned soul. He is to be understood as the Supreme Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna himself. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is therefore said of Lord Chaitanya, Krishna is now present in his five different diverse manifestations. Unless one is situated in uncontaminated goodness, it is very difficult to understand Lord Chaitanya as the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Thus, in order to understand Lord Chaitanya, one has to follow the direct disciples of Lord Chaitanya, the six Goswamis, and especially the path chalked out by Srila Jiva Goswami. The most astonishing fact is that Lord Chaitanya, although the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, never displayed himself as Krishna. Rather, whenever intelligent devotees detected that he was Lord Krishna and addressed him as Lord Krishna, he denied it. Indeed, he sometimes placed his hands over his ears, protesting that a human being should not be addressed as the Supreme Lord. Indirectly, he was teaching the Mayavadi philosophers that one should never falsely pose himself as the Supreme Lord and thereby misguide his followers. Nor should the followers be foolish enough to accept anyone and everyone as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should test by consulting scriptures and by seeing the activities of the person in question. One should not, however, mistake Lord Chaitanya and his five different diverse manifestations for ordinary human beings. Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself. The beauty of Lord Chaitanya is that, although he is the Supreme Lord, he came as a great devotee to teach all conditioned souls how devotional service should be rendered. Conditioned souls who are interested in devotional service should follow in the exemplary footsteps of Lord Chaitanya to learn how Krishna can be attained by devotional service. Thus, the Supreme Lord Himself teaches the conditioned soul how he should be approached by devotional service. By analytically studying the first, the five, by analytically studying the five diverse manifestations of the Supreme Lord, we can come to know that Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Absolute Truth and that Lord Nityananda is his immediate expansion. We can also come to understand that Advaita Prabhu is also in the category of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but is subordinate to Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda Prabhu. The Supreme Personality of Godhead and his immediate and subordinate expansion are worshipable by the other two, namely the representation of the internal potency and the representation of the marginal potency. The representation of the internal potency, Gadadhara, represents the confidential devotee, and the representation of the marginal potency, Srivasa, represents the pure devotee. Both of these are worshippers of the other three. But all four of the Lord's expansions, whether in the worshipable category, that is Nityananda and Advaita, or the worshipper category, that is Gadadhara and Srivasa, are engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There is a specific difference between the pure devotee and the confidential devotee. The different potencies of the Lord are engaged in serving the Supreme Lord in different transcendental relationships. They are situated in conjugal love, in parental affection, in friendship, or in servitude. By judging impartially, one can find that the internal potencies of the Supreme Lord, who are engaged in conjugal love with the Lord, are the best of all devotees. Thus, both internal devotees and confidential devotees are attracted by the conjugal love of the Supreme Absolute Truth. These are the most confidential devotees of Lord Chaitanya. Other pure devotees who are more or less attached to Sri Nityananda Prabhu and Advaita Prabhu are attracted by other transcendental relationships such as parental affection, friendship, and servitorship. When such devotees are very much attached to the activities of Lord Chaitanya, they at once become confidential devotees in conjugal love with the Supreme Lord. There is a very nice song sung by Sri Narottam Das Thakur, a great devotee and acharya in the disciplic succession from Lord Chaitanya. Narottam Das sings, when will there be transcendental eruptions all over my body simply by my hearing the name of Gauranga? When will tears incessantly flow from my eyes simply by my uttering the names of the Lord? When will Lord Nityananda have mercy upon me and make all my desires for material enjoyment insignificant? When shall I be purified by giving up all contaminations of material enjoyment? And when shall I be able to see the transcendental abode, Vrindavan? When shall I be eager to accept the six Goswamis as my prime guides? And when will I be able to understand the conjugal love of Krishna? No one should be eager to understand the conjugal love of Krishna without undergoing disciplinary training under the six Goswamis of Vrindavan. We will continue to read now so that we can complete this chapter today. The Sankirtan movement, inaugurated by Lord Chaitanya, is a transcendental pastime of the Lord. By it, I live simultaneously to preach and popularize this movement in the material world. In that Sankirtana movement of Lord Chaitanya, Nityananda, and Advaita are his expansions. In that Sankirtana movement of Lord Chaitanya, Nityananda and Advaita are his expansions, and Gadadhara and Srivasa are his internal and marginal potencies, respectively. The living entities are also called marginal potency because they have either of two attitudes, namely the tendency to surrender unto Krishna or the tendency to become independent of him and try for material enjoyment. Due to this propensity for material enjoyment, the living entity becomes contaminated by the material world. When a living entity is dominated by a desire for material enjoyment and becomes entangled in material life, he is subjected to the threefold miseries of material existence. There is a nice example showing how Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtana movement can save one from the miseries of material existence. The desire for material enjoyment is just like a seed sown in the earth. If a seed is inundated by too much water, there is no possibility of its fructifying. Similarly, if a conditioned soul is captivated by material enjoyment, because the seed of such enjoyment is within his heart, he can be overwhelmed and overpowered by a flood of transcendental activities performed in love of God. In this way, his seed of material enjoyment cannot fructify into a conditioned life of material existence. The conditioned living entities in the present age of Kali are being overpowered by the flood of love of God inaugurated by Lord Chaitanya and his associates. In this connection, there is a verse written by His Holiness Prabodhananda Saraswati in his book Sri Chaitanya Chandramrita. This verse states that materialistic persons are very enthusiastic to maintain their family members, wife, and children, and that there are also many mystic speculators who are engaged in speculating about liberation from the miseries of material life, and who therefore undergo various austerities and penances. But those who have discovered the greatest transcendental flavor in the movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu no longer have a taste for such activities. Those who are under the impression that there is material contamination in the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and in his devotional service are called Mayavadis. According to their imperfect speculation, the impersonal Brahman is the only existence in the cosmic manifestation. As soon as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is introduced, they consider that his personality arises from Maya or the external material energy. Such persons consider all incarnations of the Supreme Lord to be contaminated by this material energy. According to them, the material body and the activities of matter are all that give a living being an individual identity. According to them, liberation means the end of an individual identity for the pure living being. In other words, the Mayavadis maintain that when a living entity is liberated, he becomes one with the supreme impersonal Brahman. According to such Mayavada philosophy, the personality of Godhead, his abode, his devotional service, and his emotional devotees are all under the spell of Maya and are consequently subjected to the material condition. Those who forget the transcendental nature, those who forget the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord, his abode, his devotional service, and his devotees, consider all these to be but manifestations of material activity. One who thinks that there is a possibility of arguing about transcendence is called an agnostic, and one who thinks that there is a possibility of criticizing transcendence is called an atheist. Lord Chaitanya wanted to accept all kinds of agnostics, atheists, skeptics, and unfaithfuls and swallow them in the flood of love of God. Therefore, he accepted the renounced order of life to attract all these forces. Lord Chaitanya remained a householder until his 24th year, and in the 25th year of his life, he accepted the renounced order. After accepting the renounced order of life, sannyasa, he attracted many other sannyasis. When he had been spreading the Sankirtana movement as a family man, many Mayavadi sannyasis did not take his movement very seriously. But after the Lord accepted the sannyas order of life, he delivered not only Mayavadi sannyasis but speculative students, atheists, and those who were attached to fruitive activities and unnecessary criticism. The Lord was so kind that he accepted all these people and delivered to them the most important factor in life, love of God. To fulfill his mission of bestowing love of God upon the conditioned souls, Lord Chaitanya devised many methods to attract those who were uninterested in love of God. After he accepted the renounced order, all the agnostics, critics, atheists, and mental speculators became his students and followers. Even many who were not Hindus and who did not follow the Vedic principles accepted Lord Chaitanya as the supreme teacher. The only persons who avoided the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were those sannyasis who were known as the Mayavadi philosophers of Banaras. Their plight is described by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami. The Mayavadi philosophers of Banaras were less intelligent because they wanted to measure everything by direct perception. On this basis, they calculated that whatever is perceived by material means is Maya or illusion. Since Maya is full of variegatedness and the absolute truth is transcendental to Maya, they concluded that there is no variegatedness in the absolute truth. During Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time, there were also other impersonalist philosophers known as the Mayavadi philosophers of Sarnath. Sarnath is a place near Banaras where Buddhist philosophers used to reside, and even today many stupas of the Buddhist Mayavadis can be seen. The Mayavadi philosophers of Sarnath are different from the impersonalists who believe in the impersonal manifestation of Brahman. According to the Sarnath philosophers, there is no spiritual existence at all. The fact is that both the Mayavadi philosophers of Banaras and the philosophers of Sarnath are entrapped by material nature. None of them actually know the nature of the absolute transcendence. Although superficially accepting the Vedic principles and considering themselves transcendentalists, the philosophers of Banaras do not accept spiritual variegatedness. Because they have no information about devotional service, they are called non devotees or those who are against the devotional service of Lord Krishna. The impersonalists speculate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees and subject them to the tests of direct perception. But the Lord, his devotees, and his devotional service are not subject to direct perception. In other words, spiritual variegatedness is unknown to the Mayavadi philosophy. Therefore, all the Mayavadi philosophers and sannyasis criticized Lord Chaitanya when he was conducting his Sankirtana movement. They were surprised to see Lord Chaitanya chanting and dancing after he accepted his sannyas order from Keshava Bharati, for Keshava Bharati belonged to the Mayavadi school. Since Lord Chaitanya therefore also belonged to the Mayavadi sect of sannyasis, the Mayavadis were surprised to see him engaged in chanting and dancing instead of hearing or reading the Vedanta Sutras, as is the custom. The Mayavadi philosophers are very fond of the Vedanta and they misinterpret it in their own way. Misunderstanding their own position, they criticized Lord Chaitanya as an unauthorized sannyasi, arguing that because he was a sentimentalist, he was not actually a bona fide sannyasi. All these criticisms were carried to Lord Chaitanya when he was at Banaras, and he was not at all surprised at them. He even smiled when the news was carried to him. He did not associate with the Mayavadi sannyasis, but remained alone and executed his own mission. After staying for some days in Banaras, he started for Mathura. Thus ends chapter 17 of Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, entitled Lord Chaitanya, the Original Personality of Godhead. Thank you so much for joining. We shall meet again in the next session and continue to read. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Vishwa Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.